Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Carol Robin King. Today we're going to talk about how to show distance when you are doing a painting. It has to do with color and texture and how you're going to vary your color to make it look like it's further away. So the first thing I'm going to do is put in a sky, which I'm going to make very soft because the whole point of this is to make it look distant, right? So if I make my sky too bright, I will sort of ruin that whole concept. And this is just a little bit of, let me see, what is that? A little bit of Cerulean and Prussian mixed, which looks very similar to Antwerp, which is my favorite blue. I'm using a 3/4 inch angled for the sky. It just does the sky really easily. Now before that completely dries, I'm going to go to a smaller angled, and I'm going to do my hills. And I want to do it before the sky dries completely, because I want these hills to sort of run into it, maybe ever the slightest bit. Not too much, but just a little bit. It does make them look like they're further away. Now this is a little bit of green and blue. Blue does give some distance. Those are running up. It kind of looks like trees. Actually didn't want it to run that much. That sky was a little bit too wet. One way to add a little bit of distance to your hills or to anything is to put its complementary color. Look how that toned that green way down. It just does not look as green anymore. It neutralizes it. A complementary color will neutralize it and take it to the gray side. So rather than watering it down and trying to make it look gray, you can actually neutralize it just by adding a little bit of the complementary color. Other than the fact that that ran up way too high because I had it too wet, we can come do this slightly closer hill. This is how much I wanted it to run, just a little bit. Now we're going to grab a little bit of the complementary red and throw it in there, which is going to send it further back. This hill is just a hair further forward, so we can darken it just a hair. And there's another hill back there that we can put in. This is a card size, obviously. And again, I'm going to grab a little red. You can pre-mix it too. I just prefer mixing colors on paper. I like the way it works that way and the way it blends. It just, I like it. I prefer mixing things on paper. If you wanted to fix that sky, I suppose you could by coming and lifting off all that color that bled and just blending your sky a little bit. And there, your hill's kind of blended into the sky now. You can add a little bit of detail to your mountains if you like. I'm sort of making this up as I go. I'm not looking at a picture. So, but that just looks like there's very distant trees there somewhere. Just the sort of the hint of shapes of trees by going up and down with my brush. Okay. Now, that really sent it back. If I had not done that, and I just did my sky, and then I came in with just the green that I did, mixed with a little bit of blue, which is what I did before. Mix it with a little bit more blue, make sure it looks about the same. Okay, and put in my hills. Number 1 hill, number 2 hill, number 3 hill. Look at the difference. That's just, that's like two completely different concepts. Now, granted, my blue is a little bit brighter here because I didn't notice that, but let's lighten up that blue, and you will still see the difference in the hills. Look at the difference in those hills. These are obviously way back there, and these guys are like boom, right in your face, right? Makes a big difference when you lighten it up and add some of the complementary color. And that for green can be sort of anything on the spectrum of the opposite, which would be red, any kind of red. The complementary to blue is orange. Complementary to purple is yellow. So, just look at your color wheel and you'll find the complementary colors. And that's what you want to add to it. It will neutralize the color a little bit and it sends it back. Now let's say that we have a field here. This is a field of some kind of crop, okay? Next to this dude's farm. Now that's pretty bright right there. If I did that whole thing that way, it would not look like there's any distance to it, would it? That's some kind of crop he's got. And it's maybe ready for harvest, which is probably why it's this color. So if I leave that, that's not going to look very distant. But my raw sienna, so the opposite of raw sienna is going to include a little bit of violet because that's the opposite of yellow, and raw sienna has a lot of yellow in it. We're going to put some violet back here in the distance, and we're going to water it down a little bit too. I'm going to remove a little bit of the color so that it's watered down, and then I've added a little bit of violet to it as well. Look how that sends that back. And then as you get closer to the front, you make it brighter and darker. Maybe it's in lines. The lines get darker and clearer as they get closer. I'm going to see, do the water down first. Of course, if I wasn't trying to demonstrate it, how bright it is first, you would not be watering it down first. You would actually apply your color just more watered down towards the back. You wouldn't be going back over it the way I am and trying to remove it. That's the hard way to do it, but that's just because I want you to see the difference between how that makes it look more distant, whereas when it gets brighter, it looks closer. And of course, perspective-wise, you need your lines to be getting wider as they get closer as well. If your point goes right next to your house, that helps too with perspective. Removing a little color, adding a little of the contrast. It just sends it back. Okay. Now, in painting, you also have what's called composition, which we're not actually studying that today, but you want something that draws the eye. And we've already got something taking your eye down the road, right? So you're looking at this barn. And if I try to paint this barn bright red, it's going to stand out way too much. So I'm going to take a little bit of green, which is the complementary color to red. I'm going to mix them together And it will make a brownish red, which looks much more distant. And that was too wet. It's bleeding down into my... You can make it a little bit redder. And maybe the sun's hitting it, and so it'll be brighter because the sun hit it. Maybe if we leave a white roof on it too, that would help. So there's your big old barn in the distance. Let's make his roof kind of silvery, like it's a tin roof. We'll come back to that in a minute when it's dry. But I didn't make it bright red because if I just did the red, that's just way too bright. And it just doesn't look like it's in the distance. It's too red. That may look cute if you're just looking for, very bright, modern type picture. But if you're trying to send somebody's eye and make it look like it's in the distance, you don't want that bright, bright, brightness. Okay, we'll let that sit for a minute and dry out. In the meantime, we can come mess with this road. I'm going to shadow it first. A little bit of, I think Payne's Gray maybe would work if it's not too dark. I'm just shadowing the distance so that there's no bright white there, because anything bright white should be up front. It should not be way back in the distance if it's bright. You want the bright whites to be up near the front. I'm laying my brush on its side to get some texture. Tying in a little bit of the color from the crop, which is raw sienna. This is not a fancy picture. That's not what I was trying to do. I'm just trying to show you how to do some pictures that look distant. I think this guy should have a little tree by his house. So we're going to put a little tree right here. If I did bright green and didn't add anything to it, it would not look distant. It would look like that tree is way too close. But if I if I lighten it up a little bit, see how can we lighten it? I can just remove a little bit of it. There. And then add a little bit of contrasting color in the shadow area. And that sent it back again. We're going to put it right up against this roof. Okay, we'll let that dry. There should always be a big old tree next to a farmhouse. Put another one right here. Okay, those are way back there. How about some little trees right here on the ridge? I'm going to demonstrate, you can add some blue to the green also. It's a slightly different look, but you can add some blue. See how different that looks though? I prefer adding the complementary color. Some people say just add some blue to make it look further. Well, yeah, that does work in some ways, but I find that adding a complementary color to a little bit of a green, adding red to a little bit of blue, adding orange, etc., etc. Sends it back a lot better. And there's our little ridge of trees way back there. I put them kind of on the horizon so that they're not super detailed or anything. Maybe a couple of them are taller. And you can make them darker towards the bottom. Not too dark, because if it's too dark, it brings it too far forward. But you can add a little bit of darkness here and there so that you can see it better. Let's see here. That's dry enough. We can come mess with our little road. Again, I'm laying it on its side. It gives you a gravelly type texture. And you can also put a little shadow in there, like it's tire tracks. That gives it quite a bit of distance appearance as well. It does a great job of that. I'm zigzagging a little bit because if your eye was just put straight lines there, it wouldn't look natural. But if you zigzag it a little bit, it looks more like it's, broken up by the roughness of the gravel. And then you can come in on the side here of your gravel road. And we're towards the front, so I'm getting darker. And maybe there's a little bit of brush up here up front. It's probably not the right brush for that. Let's see what we can't do here. I was just adding a little bit of grass or stuff growing there by the side of the road next to the gravel. You can be as detailed as you want, obviously. I'm just trying to give it a little bit of texture closer up front, because the closer you get to the front, the more detailed and the brighter the colors can be. So your eye is being drawn back, so that's good composition, right? It's got a little S, that's a good composition, or a little crescent. I'm going to water down some Payne's Gray. I don't want it super dark, because if it's super dark, remember that's going to dry quite a bit lighter. But if it's super dark, it's going to look like it's too close, or it'll draw it up. And we don't want to do that. Put a little shadow under the roof edge. Okay. A couple of stems on our trees. Can't see that. I think that's still wet, so it's not actually working too well because it's too wet. Okay. You can add a little inkling of stems in these, but you don't want it too detailed because it will bring it too far forward. So just the occasional idea that there's something back there is all you need. So I hope that shows you how to do a little bit of distance, how to give the idea of distance in your art. See how these lines, even themselves, are taking it your eye where you want it to go, which is towards the little building. I'm going to add a little bit of gray to define the side of this road. And then what I would like to do is take a little of my bleed proof white, which I like to use. And what I would do is make this roof a little bit whiter. Maybe show the other side of it. And put a little bit of where the sunlight's hitting, maybe in front of that barn. It's broken up, it's not solid. So it just looks like maybe the sunlight is hitting right here. And you could do that with an eraser too, but if you don't, this will also bring forward that horizon edge for you. Not putting a lot on there because that'll bring it too far forward if I put very much on there. You could add a lot of things to this, obviously. You could add another tree. You could add a mailbox. A little mailbox right about here would be really cute. But at any rate, I like the way this turned out. Towards the front here, you could even make your ditch just a little bit darker to make it appear closer. My brush is really almost dry. It's really more of a dry brush technique I'm doing right here because I hardly have any paint at all on there. The occasional little line across sort of gives it that realistic look also. There you go. If you look at this, now that it's dry, you can hardly even see this last hill way in the distance, which is what I was going for. I wanted it to be way back there. This one that sort of bled into my background actually worked for us because it just looks like it's melting into the background. And this next one here, you can barely see that one as well. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to send it back. And it would not have worked with just the green. Look at the difference. This is very far forward, like it's just right in front of you. This is way back in the distance. Okay. So I hope that helps you with making your paintings give the sense of distance. And we'll catch you again next week. Have an awesome week. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And keep on painting.